Welcome back to Sacred Arc, a podcast about life, loss, and the soul in between. I'm Kimberly, intuitive grief guide, death doula, licensed esthetician, and whether I wanted to be or not, a lifelong student of grief. Today's episode is going to be a little special because Mother's Day can be absolutely beautiful. It can be full of love, celebration, gratitude, memories, family traditions, all of those things. But for a lot of people, myself included, Mother's Day is also incredibly painful. And I think sometimes that pain gets overlooked because the world around us is so focused on celebration. The flowers everywhere you walk into a store, the commercials, the cards lining entire aisles, the social media posts, the brunch reservations, the constant reminders leading up to the day itself. And when you're grieving, those reminders can feel overwhelming. Not always in dramatic ways, sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's just this quiet ache that follows you throughout the day, a reminder of who isn't here, or what no longer feels the same. And grief around Mother's Day can exist in so many forms. For some people, it's grieving a mother who has passed away. For others, it's grieving the relationship they wish they could have had with their mother. For some, it's the grief of infertility, pregnancy loss, wanting to become a mother and not knowing if that will happen. And for others, it's the grief of being a mother who has lost a child, which changes this day forever. And I think that's what makes holidays like this so difficult, is that grief suddenly becomes public. You can move through your normal life carrying grief quietly, and then a holiday arrives and suddenly the world seems built around the thing you're missing, everywhere you look. And that can feel incredibly isolating, especially when everyone else around you appears to be celebrating. Even something as simple as walking into a grocery store can feel emotional this time of year. You walk past giant displays filled with flowers and candles and signs that say things like "Best Mom Ever" or "Don't Forget Mom." And sometimes people don't realize how much those little moments can hurt, because grief doesn't only live in the big anniversaries. It lives in the accumulation of all the tiny reminders too. The things that catch you off guard, the moments you weren't emotionally prepared for. And what's hard is the world keeps moving normally around you while you're having this very internal experience. People grabbing gifts, making plans, laughing, and meanwhile, you're trying to hold yourself together emotionally in the middle of Target. And honestly, sometimes even emails can hit hard. Those marketing emails that flood your inbox this time of year, gift guides, restaurant specials, Mother's Day reminders, "Don't forget Mom." And if you're grieving, those things can feel surprisingly painful. Not because the world is doing anything wrong, but because grief makes ordinary things emotional. That's actually something I wanted to talk about today because I received an email recently from the Golden Steer in Las Vegas. And instead of just sending out promotions for Mother's Day, they sent an email acknowledging that this time of year can be difficult for some people. And they gave people the option to opt out of Mother's Day emails entirely. And honestly, seeing that affected me more than I expected it to. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was thoughtful. Because somebody took the time to consider the emotional reality that not everybody experiences this holiday the same way. And I think that kind of empathy matters deeply, especially in grief. People often think support has to be something huge. But sometimes it's simply feeling acknowledged, feeling considered, feeling like your pain wasn't completely invisible. And reading that email, I had this moment of feeling emotional because I thought, this is what compassion looks like. Not fixing grief, not removing it, just recognizing it exists and making space for it. And honestly, I still haven't even got to eat there yet because they're booked so far out. But that email alone made me feel connected to the humanity behind their brand. And it made me want to eat there even more because empathy leaves an impact, especially on people who are grieving. Mother's Day can also hold grief in multiple directions at once. There are people grieving mothers, and there are mothers grieving children. And sometimes those experiences overlap. And that's a kind of emotional complexity that's hard to explain unless you've lived it, because when you lose your mom, there's often this feeling of losing part of your foundation, the person you instinctively wanted to call, the person connected to your childhood, your history, your identity. Even complicated relationships with mothers can carry grief because sometimes you grieve not only the person, but what you needed and never fully received. And when you lose a child, Mother's Day changes forever, forever. Even if you still have living children, even if people still celebrate you, even if you smile through parts of the day, there is an absence there that never stops existing, a part of your heart that remains aware of who is missing. And what makes this kind of grief difficult is that the world still expects the holiday to feel joyful. But grief and love coexist, and many mothers are carrying both at the same time. I also wanted to share a little bit of my own experience with this, because Mother's Day grief has looked very different for me depending on the loss. And I think that's important to talk about too. The first Mother's Day after I lost my mom, I honestly didn't really want to do anything. I didn't feel celebratory. I didn't feel connected to the day in a way that I used to. And there was this strange feeling of watching everyone else move through the holiday normally while I was trying to figure out how to emotionally survive it. But eventually, I decided to do a few things that I knew she would have loved. I made some of her favorite food. I wrote her a message on a balloon and let it go. And even though it was still painful, there was something healing about intentionally connecting to her that way. Not forcing myself to move on, but allowing space for love and grief to exist together. And I think sometimes that's what helps, not removing the pain, but creating moments of connection inside of it. But losing a child is different. Mother's Day after child loss is a completely different kind of pain. The first Mother's Day after I lost my son, I couldn't even get out of bed. I cried almost the entire day, and at the time I remember beating myself up for that, feeling like maybe I should be handling it differently. Maybe I should try harder to get out, to distract myself, to function, but looking back now, I realize that was simply what I needed. That was grief, raw grief. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes people put pressure on themselves to grieve in a way that looks acceptable to other people, to stay productive, to stay composed, to keep participating in life normally, but grief doesn't work like that. And especially after child loss, your body and nervous system are trying to survive something unimaginable. So if all you can do is stay in bed and cry, that is not weakness, that is grief. And sometimes survival looks very quiet. Even now, a few years later, Mother's Day still isn't the same for me. And I've stopped expecting it to be. Instead, I've learned to move through it differently. I usually prefer to spend it quietly out in nature, somewhere I can feel connected to him. Somewhere I don't feel surrounded by the intensity of the holiday everywhere I look. And that has become a way of caring for myself throughout the day. And I think that's something I really want people to hear today. There is no right way to survive a grief-heavy holiday. Some people need connection. Some people need solitude. Some people need tradition, and some people even need distraction. Some people need to stay in bed all day and cry, and honestly, that's okay too. You are not failing at grief because this day hurts. You are not alone in your pain today. I'm right there with you in it. And that's honestly part of why I wanted to record this episode for Mother's Day itself. Because this kind of grief can feel incredibly isolating. And I think people need reminders that there are others out there quietly carrying this day too. So if today feels heavy for you, I just want to say this. You do not have to force yourself to experience this day the way everyone else is. You don't have to perform happiness. You don't have to push yourself into spaces that feel emotionally overwhelming. You're allowed to protect your heart. You're allowed to step away from social media. You're allowed to decline invitations. You're allowed to cry. And you're allowed to feel grateful and grieving at the same time. To carry love and pain together. To honor this day in whatever way feels safest for you emotionally. Maybe it helps to do something small that feels connecting. Maybe it's cooking their favorite meal, lighting a candle, looking through photos, going somewhere that reminds you of them, writing them a letter, sitting outside, talking to them, or maybe what helps today is simply allowing yourself to rest, without guilt, without pressure, without feeling like you have to perform strength for anyone else. Because sometimes healing on days like this doesn't look like feeling okay. Sometimes it just looks like being gentle with yourself while it hurts. Before we close, I just want to sit in that reality with you for a moment, because not everybody experiences this day the same way. And I think sometimes people forget that. So if you can, just pause for a moment and close your eyes if that feels okay, and place one hand over your heart and one hand over your stomach, just allowing yourself to settle into your body for a second. Take a slow breath in through your nose and a slow breath out through your mouth. And whatever this day brings up for you, whether it's grief for your mother, your child, your relationship, your longing, or simply the exhaustion of carrying loss in a world that keeps celebrating around you, just let yourself acknowledge it honestly, without judging it, without trying to fix it. And if today hurts, that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means something meaningful existed there. Someone meaningful existed there. Love existed there. And if today feels heavy, I hope you can offer yourself even a small amount of softness. Maybe that looks like simply making it through today. And that is enough. Because grief doesn't make you weak, and it doesn't make you ungrateful for the love you still have. It just means your heart remembers. So wherever you are today, whether you feel surrounded by people or completely alone, I hope you know that there are so many others quietly carrying this day too. And you do not have to carry it by yourself. This has been Sacred Arc. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll meet you again in the space between.